Nigeria's inflation rate eased to 18.12% in April 2021. Yes, the first decline since August 2019. Down slightly from a four-year high of 18.17% in March. While food inflation, which is the major component of inflation, dropped to 22.72% from a nearly 16-year peak of 22.95% in the prior month. The April inflation figures no doubt came as a surprise to many analysts, as there were projections that going by the continuous rise in inflation in months, the inflation rate for the month of April is expected to increase further to the 19% threshold. Meanwhile, prices continue to rise sharply for transportation, pharmaceutical products, vehicle spare parts, households and utilities, and personal grooming establishments. With the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic still visible on the country's fragile economy and the main determinants of inflation far from abating, analysts say the drop in the inflation figure will signal a retraction of the economy, while others believe this could indicate that inflation has reached its peak and could be on its way down. I have joining me live from our Abuja studios to give more insights into this as we break it down. Of course, amongst other economic issues, is the Managing Director, Chief Executive Officer of Dignity Finance and Investment Limited, Dr. Chijioke Ikechukwu. Dr. Ikechukwu, good afternoon to you. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Tolu. It's my pleasure.
I'm going to start this way. What were you expecting? All of the projections I saw online, from economists and professionals like you, was that there was going to be an increase. But the reverse was the case. We saw a little bit of drop. Yes, marginal. But what do you think? What were you really expecting before you saw those figures?
Well, when I went through that figure, all I called it was a flash drop. A flash drop because its own circumstance. It happened, but of course a good number of economists didn't think it was going to drop. We were already projecting that we're going to continue to have an increase in inflation rates. The reason for this projection was the fact that the main causes of the increase haven't actually improved. You know, there is something you call causality effect, or the law of causality, which is the fact that once in any effect, there must be a cause for it. And so I looked at all the things that could actually cause a drop that we experienced. I didn't see. The major things that have led to the increase of the inflation rates before now, we're still there. You know, the level of insecurity that we have experienced, the exchange rate that was as high as it was, and a good number of things that actually have played out to increase the inflation rate at the time, as at last month. As at March. But for the end of April, to experience such a drop, one would just look at all the various causes before now to know whether there has been any kind of improvement. I checked and I didn't see any. So it's either the supply increased or the demand dropped, or there was money circulation that actually reduced also to have caused such a drop in inflation. But having said this, I also said it is also possible that either the March figure was probably not as accurate as it could have been, or the April figure probably was not as accurate as we would expect. So these are all the circumstances that would have led to that flash I called, that drop. So we watch it and see what other things could have caused such a drop, while every other person was projecting that even if it does not drop, it will remain constant.
Will this be the beginning of that negative, or of that drop? I think, would you agree that it has gotten to its peak? Well, you've already identified that most of the fundamentals are yet to abate. So what could now bring up this drop? For example, food inflation, 22.95%, now stands at 22.72%. We know that our farmers can't still go to the farm as usual, the way they used to before now. and all of the other issues that have to do even with the headers and all of this. So some say we need to rejig and, you know, reassess these figures, something like that.
Yes, you know, that was actually the cause of the surprise, because the headline inflation was actually influenced by a lot of it from the food inflation before now. And if the food inflation didn't drop drastically to be able to reduce the headline inflation rate, so everybody's just asking for the National Bureau of Statistics to put more light on what really happened. You know, like I said, we're still looking, we're still trying to analyze to look at where the possible drop, even though it was marginal drop, you know, like I said, I called it a flash. Even though it was a marginal drop, but we're still looking at where the drop came from, because all the indicators that actually could cause such a drop, they didn't happen. And so we are still checking, and maybe they will just throw more light on that, and so that Nigerians will understand more.
Now, let's not look at issues that we grapple with now, because these are what we still have on ground. We had border closure before now, and at the end of the day, the borders were left open, thrown open. We also have issues with Forex, which you talked about. Now, what do you see? How well do you see us managing all of these issues moving forward? Insecurity is also key at this time. Even at this morning, we're still hearing information of INEC offices being thrown into fire. You know, so what do you see? How do you see all of this affecting our figures moving on? We are expecting GDP figures too very soon. Are you saying that we might really grow as much as we expect?
No. The insecurity, instead of improving, is getting worse. And so we all know that insecurity has been a major bane in the growth of our country right now, and it's a major bane in the foreign direct investments that we're expecting to come into the country. If insecurity has not improved, exchange rate has still remained as high as it has been, and now we're seeing even the insecurity escalating to areas that were before now not involved in such level of insecurity. Just like you said, the INEC offices are being burnt everywhere, and probably more of such may happen. We have seen the unrest somewhere around Kaduna between the Labour Congress and the government of Kaduna State. So these are all the things that are actually supposed to impact negatively on the rates and the economic growth that we experience today. So I think the government should do everything. Both federal and state governments should do everything to ensure that all these factors are put under control. Otherwise, where we're going to be heading to may not be good for the country and the existence of the country in terms of economy. And so we need to actually address all these factors that are impacting us negatively.
Very, very importantly. Now, what about the aspect of imported inflation, where many think that we need to totally substitute domestically produced products for imported goods? How well do you see us getting along that line too? Because imported inflation is also something that hits Nigeria so badly.
Yeah, if I got you very clearly, Tolu, you know, we have always been a net importer of goods and services, and we have continued in that respect. You know, so our local manufacturing capacities have dropped seriously, tremendously in all sectors, and so we can only rely on imported goods right now, most of it from imported goods. And if we're relying on imported goods, we're also going to be experiencing high costs of imported goods because of the exchange rates and the availability of this foreign currency for the importers. You know, so people cannot just access these funds when they want them and the volume or the size they want them. So these are some of the problems that we have. if only our local capacities, our local production capacities have been growing or stable, we could say we can rely less on imported goods, and then of course rely less on foreign currency and foreign exchange. You know, unfortunately, we are a net importer of goods, and I encourage Nigerians to start thinking of Plan B. The Plan B actually is not a Plan B that is all over the place. The Plan B we should be thinking about right now is thinking about what goods and services we're going to be exporting, just to take advantage of the exchange rates that we have today. Everybody should be an exporter of one thing or the other, and that way we can help the economy to get back.
Now, when inflation, when the figures come up this way from the MBS, it obviously has impact on the entire business community. Now, what do you think about the monetary policy stance? Some say that we need consistency with regards to our monetary policy stance at the moment for us to be able to get out of this. Some are saying there could even be a shift in the parameters that we have on ground already that has been the same for quite some months. Now, I don't know what you also make of that. This is not the best time to be a CBN governor.
Yeah, for many years, I don't think the monetary policy side of our economy has had the kind of pressure they have, these current ones have had in CBN, because there are so many monetary policy decisions to be taken at a time. Many times, one aspect of such decision will negatively impact the other aspect, and so you're trying to make sure inflation rate is low, you're trying to make sure that the exchange rate is low, you're trying to make sure there is employment, you're trying to make sure that the local capacities are producing. All these things work sometimes against themselves, and when you are leading the monetary policy where revenue base is not rising like you want to expect, it becomes a problem, because in fact you bring all the necessary policy and bring all the necessary decision making, but once your revenue base is low, it obviously will not give you the kind of outcome and result you want to grow your economy. You know, so I do not envy the monetary policy players today, because a whole lot of decisions will have to be taken for them to see the economy grow. So, so far, I think the CBN is doing a whole lot, and I can tell you they are doing well. The stability can only come when you have enough of what you are looking for, which is the revenue. And so, and of course, if we're talking also about the stability of the foreign exchange, again, it also has to do with availability and enough of it. So, all those things can work when we have enough of all the things, necessary things we are looking for in the monetary policy, and to help the decision making of CBN. But right now, I can tell you, they are trying their best, and I wish all the decisions they have taken will actually improve the economy. Unfortunately, most of the things that are actually holding the economy down are outside their control. The major one that I mentioned before is the insecurity in the country, which they don't have any control over. And they also, some aspects of our fiscal policy that they don't also have control over. So otherwise, I think they're doing well.
Let's go back to, before I go to food again, which is very important. Everybody wants to talk about food. What about the fiscal side? We've seen the, we must always talk about the economic sustainability plan, which is the document we're working with at the moment. And we see how detailed this is, and is supposed to complement the efforts of the monetary policy side of governance. Now, do you see both parties working hand in hand to actually get to stabilize this economy? It's worrisome what we face at the moment. We must just say it the way it is. But what do you think? Do you think the fiscal side is doing enough to support the CBN? The CBN seems to be carrying a lot of luggage.
Yeah, obviously the fiscal side is also trying to achieve a lot for the country. You know, that is why we see a lot of debt burden on the shoulders of the country, which actually is being handled by the fiscal side. But the aspect of the fiscal end I expect an improvement on is the aspect of our budgeting and budgeting processes, and the aspect of our fiscal responsibility to be sure that we are fiscally, we have a fiscal discipline in executing, first of all, in formulating our budgets, and then in articulating and utilizing our budget. We need to improve on what we're doing with our budget and the way our budgets run, the method of budgeting in the country, and the method of the way we monitor what every MDA is producing as their budget, and the level of interference the legislature is also having on the budget. So these are the things we need to really clean up. We haven't gotten it right so far, and so we expect that if we can get our budget side very well in such a way that ministries can only consume what they indeed need. Many times we see that the things that are in the budget are not even things needed by these ministries and parastatals, and then you see allocations going to those ministries just because maybe they are favored. We need to get our budgeting right. I think we need to go back to the drawing board to be able to get our budgeting right. And when we get it right, you see that the amount of money we spend on certain expenditure, we may not need to spend them. We'll probably deploy them into more useful and important areas of the economy.
Let's wrap up on this note. We are about to borrow again. And the argument is that we must borrow because funds are not coming in. Even revenue agencies of government seems to be bringing in low revenue. We know what NNPC says with regards to contributing to FAC at the moment. So one way or the other, Nigeria must borrow, just like other countries are doing, though. What do you make of this? What do you think all of these funds gotten from, either the IMF, either the World Bank, wherever the money is coming from? Where do you think it should be channeled to?
Well, unfortunately, we have a huge deficit in our budget, you know, and the huge deficit we have in our budget has actually led to the kind of borrowing that we have entered into as a country. So many things have led to this. The outcome of the lockdown of 2020 has actually impoverished many countries of the world. Nigeria is not the only country that is involved in it. But having said this, the level of our debt burden is so frightening, and it is such that even at the rate it is, if anything happens to the oil, our oil price today happens to hit adversely to the extent that oil price drops, then our situation is going to be terrible and very, very worse. But as it is today, we need to ensure that we manage what we have, and we reduce certain things that we were, you know, because I will always say, when situations are not as good as they used to be, what we need to do is just to say it's no longer business as usual. And so we need to cut down on a whole lot of things that we've been doing, especially in governance. Unfortunately, we're also deploying a lot of money in curbing insecurity in the country, which obviously these were expenditures that were not planned for, and they're just happening. So we need to ensure that we cut down on our cost of governance all over the country, from the federal to executive to the state executive and to legislature, and probably up to the judiciary. You know, we need to live our lives as if the whole world economy is not good, but we are still not living that kind of life. Like we have issues with economic issues. So as prudent and frugal Nigerians, we need to try to cut down a whole lot of excesses, and nobody's addressing all those things. We're not addressing it, so we need to start addressing some of those excesses right now.
Yes, we need to take some decisive steps at the moment for us to be able to at least put things in check and get it right. Managing Director, Chief Executive Officer, Dignity Finance and Investment Limited, and also the immediate past DG of the Abuja Chamber of Commerce, Dr. Chijioke Ikechukwu. Thank you very much for spending your afternoon with us. We appreciate this.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure, Tolu.
All right, then.